Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's springtime here in New York, and how do we know it's springtime? My son's Miata is no longer in my shop. So welcome back to Project YZ. So what are we going to do today? Well, it's final assembly time. This is exciting. As we walk in, let's take a look at where we are. All right, so coming in, we got a million projects in flight. Here's my ATC 70 that we're going to restore next. I got to get my tractor out of here. Charging up the Suron because we're going to have some fun later, but here's Project YZ. So what's the current status? Well, I got that shock charged up and back on the bike. I've got the back wheel on there. And cool thing about this is the tire, the tubes, the back brakes, all of that I rebuilt not too long ago, so we're not going to revisit that again. I've got the radiators hanging right now because I just spray painted them flat black. It's amazing when you clean these things up how much better they can look. They were in decent shape. I decided not to buy new ones, just clean them up a little bit. So we're gonna get those back on the bike, get that plumbed. We've got new hoses. I've got really not a lot more to do. Then we're gonna clean up the plastic, put that back on, put some new graphics on it. And then it's gonna be time to get some fuel and oil in this thing and get cranking. And that is gonna be exciting. Let's get going. So I'm getting the radiators back to go on the bike. I've got this hose kit, inexpensive, that I got on eBay. I think it'll be fine, I'm gonna try it out. But I noticed my old hoses, some of them have a protective rubber sleeve. The new ones don't, so taking them off the old ones, putting them on the new ones. How do you do that? How I do that, I jam a screwdriver in there pretty carefully because I'm going to keep these old hoses just in case. I shoot a little white lithium grease in there and then pull the old cover off. We'll put it on the new hose. We'll be good to go. On these old bikes, it's amazing the parts that get lost over the years. So these are my radiator bolts. 2 of them have washers, 4 of them don't. I don't have the OEM washers and I'm not going to buy them, but I have some that are close. Good little tip when you're doing a bike like this and you're putting it back together, don't assume when you took it apart it was right. Always check. All right, and here we are with the cooling system back on. And I gotta tell you, I like those blue hoses. I think it makes a big difference. All the clamps are new. Who's gonna put new hoses on with their old crappy clamps? So that's nice. I keep all of the packaging, right? So far, this is all the new stuff that's on the bike. There's a lot of stuff in there, plus the receipts. And I do that because at some point, if I ever get rid of this bike, I wanna have that so I can say, hey, I replaced all this stuff and look here's the proof. What is the Honda guy doing with a Harley Davidson shirt on? I did used to own a Harley. So people kid around with me with my use of the term clapped out. Right? I like to think clapped out is something that's been used well beyond its useful life, and then some. Case in point, here's the chain roller off of Project YZ. This thing, my friends, is just done. I mean, it's a rubber roller. It's got a little plastic insert. It's got a bearing on the other side. Absolute garbage compared to brand new. No play, very, very little play. Nice. Clapped out garbage. This is where we want to be. This bike didn't even have the top chain roller on it when I got it. That's often the first thing to go. So when you're going over the bike, check all the little parts. Starting to come together. Got the radiator fins cleaned up and on there, looking good. I got the chain on. I cleaned up the original chain guard. Got like 20 years worth of grease out from underneath it. It's just gonna get dirty again, but what are you gonna do? Not bad, not bad at all. So it's funny, you get to the point where you think you're almost done, right? I'm putting the exhaust system back together, put a new coat of heat-proof paint on there. You got a couple of these hangers, pretty straightforward. Right? It's got a bolt, it's a 6mm thread, right? It's supposed to be nice like this, right? Back to our definition have clapped out. Here's the other one. This bolt doesn't go in there because the threads are all boogered up. Somebody just jammed it in and left it. This is simple stuff, guys. Get a tap, fix those threads. Don't be a knucklehead. Here's the air box. I have a new one of these. I'm gonna clean this up. Obviously, either clean or replace that filter. Just get this all ready to go, get it back in the subframe. Got my fender down there on the floor and my FMF spark arrestor silencer, which, since this is gonna be a woods bike, it's important to have that. All right, so the filter that looked okay, other than needing to be cleaned, is actually deteriorating. That's what happens when it sits for a while and you're not using it. Thought I had another one, but I don't, so I got to order up one of those. We're going to get this thing cleaned up, and then we're almost there, guys. We're almost there. Here's a little airbox tip. My advice would be when you do the top end on your bike, take your airbox off and take it apart. This is after washing the assembled unit in my parts washer. Right, looked reasonably clean until you take it apart. And what we're looking at here, this is underneath the seal, but is probably 20-something years of accumulated grease. Not good. So, important lesson, kids. If you don't want your bike to show up on some future version of Chris Does Everything's clapped out dirt bikes that are father-son projects that you probably should have never bought to begin with, clean your airbox, take it apart. When you do your top end, get this crap out of there. It's probably why this thing blew up to begin with. Lesson learned.
I'll be honest with you. Sometimes this work is exhausting. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about.
All right, so here's the pipe dilemma. And one of the problems when you've had a bike for so long and you tear it down and you do that initial assessment is you forget some of the problems you had originally. This pipe never fit right. In fact, when I got it, all it had was these little guys in some wonky configuration to make it work. And the bottom line is, there's a spacer that's supposed to be in there. And even with that spacer in place, there's just no way that that is gonna work. And then when we come up here to the top mount, it's the same thing, right? This is where this mount is supposed to be, and it's just not gonna work. I'm not even sure what this mounting point is for. So here's a different view of the bottom with the spacer that wasn't there before. All right, you've actually got a chance of making this work. It's not too bad, but this top mount, it's just not gonna do it. So what conclusions can we draw from that? So where does that leave us? I don't think this is the right pipe. It's close. The head pipe fits kind of tight. And when I look at it, I've got this, which looks like a mounting point, and then this, which is the mounting point that's been used all this time. Looking at it closely, that is not a factory weld. So somebody took an exhaust that's close and put it on that bike. And I rode it that way. My son rode it that way for years, as our beater. So what am I gonna do? Well, here's a simple answer to that. I'm gonna put that pipe on eBay, see what I can get for it, and put on this brand new FMF fatty. Now, that means I'm probably gonna have to rejet the bike, which I didn't wanna do. And this thing I got from motorsport.com, I think. It's a little bit dusty. Apparently not selling a lot of 1999 YZ head pipes. Let's put this thing on there, see how it goes. All right, without even fooling around with it, this lines up now. The bottom one, which is just hanging here loose, is gonna line up as well. That's what happens when you have the right pipe. Let's get it tightened up. All right, so the way I do this is put it in place. I have the bolts all loose. Notice how everything fits. Notice how I've got the right bolts in the right places. Then I put the springs on, then I tighten everything up. Make sure you use Loctite. but when you're done, it's a thing of beauty.
Oh, that's nice.
All right, so a couple minutes later, here we are. Kickstarter back on, the back fender, and the number plates are in place. We come around the other side. Actually starting to look like a motorcycle again. Not a lot left to do. You'll notice I've got, instead of the stock exhaust, I've got an FMF turbine core silencer on there. This is a spark arrestor. So like I said before, this is going to be a woods bike. You got to have that. Here's another simple little thing. At some point, some past owner of the bike, when they painted the frame, decided not to take the subframe off, and of course the bolts got painted, and I don't know what kind of paint this guy used, but it is tough to get off of there. So rather than screw around with it, I just replaced them because I'm not going to have those on my bike. And after going through all the trouble of painting the frame, I put these UFO frame guards on there. I really like them. I like them a heck of a lot better than the metal ones that you can get. They look good and they match the paint exactly. A couple of tie downs, and then you put a bigger washer on that bottom bolt there. On the other side of the bike, they basically give you 2 new screws to mount the rear master cylinder and a tie down. And those will keep my boots from tearing up the paint. Hey guys, I think we're gonna wrap for today. So a couple of parting words. When you're putting the bike back together, and you got to buy this Yamaha hardware, it gets expensive really, really fast. And there's some things that you just have to buy because you can't get them elsewhere. All right, so when you saw me do the exhaust mounting, to have the right size spacer, the right size bolt, just easy to get that stuff from Yamaha. I don't mind having to pay for it when it's not on the bike to begin with. When I started putting the plastic back together, the fenders on, the side panels, all of those bolts were cheap junk. They weren't from Yamaha. I didn't think to order them when I ordered all my other parts. And it really starts to nickel and dime you to death when you add all of those up. So instead, I went to eBay, and there's a company there called Spec Bolt. And I bought their YZ125 250 plastic bolt kit. I'm not sure how many pieces are in here, but it's quite a bit. And this is to mount all the plastic, the fenders, the side panels, the rest of that. There's a bunch of other stuff thrown in. 20 bucks. And this is good. Is it as good? It doesn't match the color. These old school Yamahas, the bolts are basically like this dark green, black. These are just regular plated. They look like they're going to hold up. Quality seems to be about the same. I would highly recommend you take a look at that if you're going to do something like this. Now, what do we got left to do? Not a heck of a lot. I got to put a new air cleaner in the bike. I haven't done that yet, but you guys know how to do that already. The handlebars are loose because when I lower it down, I'm going to just make sure that everything is aligned and tight there. Got to put the fuel tank and the seat back on. And other than that, we're going to be about ready to rip. So the next video is probably the one where we're going to get this thing down off of there and fire it up. And if it's not, maybe the one after that. The other thing I noticed in putting it back together, I do have new graphics, and those are going to be cool. All my race bikes always had my number on it. This looks naked. Now, being my son's bike, it didn't have numbers on it. But I think I'm going to probably bite the bullet and put my old number 808 back on this bike. We'll see how that goes. And finally, guys, thanks for watching. Most of you aren't subscribed. If you like my content, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Give me a like and leave some comments below. In any case, thank you for watching. I hope this is valuable. And we'll see you soon, maybe on the track.